Okay, today is Thursday, April 18th. We're here in the Finance Committee meeting room 21, second floor of Town Hall. Everybody has before them an agenda. It was sent out by email. We have minutes for March 26th and April 2nd. If we get to them, we'll push it to the end of the meeting. Reserve fund stands at $35,500.
23.
Sorry, $23,500. This is the public forum where we can talk about items that are not on the agenda. Anybody out there? Anything? Rosemary?
I have items that are not on the agenda that pertain to last meeting that I feel are really dangerous financial statements, and I want to clarify.
Well, that, I think we'll take that up under old business.
Well,
That's not
Well, okay,
public forum.
then I will separate it to this one.
Rosemary, we're gonna cover it in an old business.
This is two different things. They're broken up into two different things.
Oh.
I had two different things. So one would be, one is an awareness of the additions to school funding. I think what was said in the school committee meeting was we added programs. An awareness that those programs were not added through the levy. They're added through a grant. So pulling back already to the amounts that they had already, the compromise is more than those 5 teachers. Essentially, a continued progressive
Okay,
pathway
hold on.
that we
Rosemary, I'm gonna have to shut you off, because this is on the
Okay.
agenda. We are talking about the fiscal 25 budget, right?
Okay, then I will just say that was a misrepresented at school committee. Misrepresented at school committee that it was only essentially that there was something added. It was not. It was $75,000 grant-funded pathways. There should be an awareness to that. There's another one that needs to be. Additionally, I guess this next one will be the school committee. I will say that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's another aspect.
Okay. So, we're under new business. We're going to be talking about the ATM warrant and Article 2. They think that's a major focus of these meetings. We need to get our recommendations in and printed in the warrant before the end of the day on Tuesday, if it's possible. So, we probably won't touch much on subcommittee reports. We probably won't talk about any of the old business items. Fiscal 25 budget obviously is there. Communications, we have none, and the town administrator is with us for updates. And then the bottom will show you the next 2 meetings are Monday and Tuesday. So I'll be sending out a reminder email on Friday this week, and usually it goes out on Thursday for a Tuesday meeting. But it's going to go out on Friday because I didn't want to confuse you by sending it out this morning. So Friday's email will just be a reminder with the agenda for both Monday and Tuesday's meetings. So the only thing we amended today, Tuesday's meeting, to reflect a reserve fund transfer request that's coming from the fire chief. Do you know about what it's in it?
Some repairs, the
Ambulance
unforeseen
repairs.
ambulance
Right.
repairs that just came up, we call them.
So the only way we could talk about it on Tuesday is if I amended the posting that's already been submitted. So I amended it, so we can talk about that on Tuesday. So I would consider that if we get some information, obviously, from the fire chief, I'll forward it immediately, and we'll consider that the holdover, because you're being made aware of it. Typically, we hold it over, you know. So we'll should have all the information on Monday, and then talk about it on Tuesday, and recommend based on its warrants whether we support it or not. All right, so that's the only amendment there for our upcoming meetings. So for tonight, like I said, I think the best course of events is the fact that we have Mary Beth there. We have 2 of the selectmen with us tonight. So what we'll do is try to I think we should make an outline of our plan here. Because we have 2 Article 2s, reflective of one for an override and one not for an override. And so if we just make an outline of how we're going to prepare, and just open it up for discussion, I think, at the beginning here, just to review what we voted on at our last meeting. The committee voted unanimously not to support the override, right? So in previous conversations with the town administrator and the board of selectmen, it was the plan to take that article out of order at the town meeting, right? And the town
I
meeting.
think that makes the most sense.
Right. So from there, right, depending on how the vote goes,
Right.
right? If town meeting says yes to the override, and then we have a dual scenario, right? If they say no to the override, then we really have only one Article 2 to review. Does that seem to be everybody's interpretation?
Well, no, I mean, I would think that if the article passed, our hopes would be that we look at the selectmen recommend with override, and if it failed, then we would then defer to without override.
Right, but what we're going to be actually looking at is the end column, right? Like what
Right.
the FinCom recommends,
Correct.
right? So just walk me through this. If the town says no to the ballot question, not to the ballot question and the
To the warrant.
associated
Put it on.
warrant article, right? And they say no, then we're really only reviewing one Article 2. Is that correct? Am I thinking the right way?
I would
Yeah.
agree, if
Right?
Like
town
if-
meeting says no
they-
to an override, then the column
Then you have
that says
to-
with override is moved.
Is
It's
moved,
like-
right.
Because they've already said no, we don't want.
So I think that's the one we should work on first. That's the only thing I'm thinking about. Rosemary?
Okay, there's a risk of something else happening that nobody's, well, I don't know if anybody's thinking about it, but the same mechanism in the law that they use to codify the amounts, the $4.5 million that went over to Hanson, was whatever the towns vote. So if both Hanson and Whitman vote the lower amount, which is the 5%, which would be devastating to education, that is codified, even though it wasn't the assessment sent over. And I do think that's dangerous, so I would ask that we consider even putting this override on this ballot.
Okay. Kathleen?
Just one brief comment, I did contact a number of people at DESI and was able to talk to Michelle Griffin, who's a part of the finance and budget, and she said they're always interpreting how to post. You ask 10 lawyers, they'll give you 10 different opinions, but the one thing that is absolute is that the town must vote on the assessment sent by the school. Whether it's in two pieces or in one piece, it has to vote up or down. They can't say, we'll give you 15 million, we maybe give you another 500,000 someplace else. There has to be a vote on the 19,135,000 that the school has sent to the town for its assessment. And I will share, she sent it to me in an email late today, I'll share that email with you.
Which can be in two pieces.
She said it can be, it's not DESI's preference, but there has to be a vote for the entire assessment that was sent to the town by the school.
It's just the article and the,
I get it.
the two pieces.
Yeah, I get it.
So would then town meeting go right to Article 2 and the line item associated with the assessment to keep it together?
So as long as that article passes, that's one piece of their assessment. And then the column with selectmen recommend with override gives them the other piece. So for the total, and that's correct, they have to have the total. So as long as that vote passes to put it before the taxpayers, the residents, on a ballot, then we go from there.
Okay, so then just walking through another scenario, that the town votes yes to go for the override. Does that not then enable the town not to accept the assessment and then it goes back to the schools?
Say that if they vote yes,
Yes.
if they vote yes to the article to put it forth for a ballot question, that's one piece of their assessment, and this column here, selectmen recommend with override, gives them the balance
Right.
for the two pieces for the total.
And then, when it goes to the ballot box, what I'm trying to just kind of get to the end is, and they vote no there, then the assessment goes back to the schools.
Correct.
Right? So here's, in my mind, why the 5% Article 2 exercise is kind of futile. Because I would assume if it went back to the schools, they wouldn't come back with 5. They'd come back with 6.76 or something. Right? So Article 2, that entire article would have to be Article 2 would have to be amended,
Maybe not,
like we just did with this last one, right?
maybe not.
Yeah. Well, I would think if the assessment went back to the school, it wouldn't be in their best interest to come back at 5%. Would you think that would be a good negotiation? Rosemary?
Okay. There are a couple of components here. This was not voted, this override was not voted by the school. This is a gray, convoluted aspect. It also was a clearly discussed and deliberated. This action was deliberated with one school committee member, which is not legal. She cannot determine how you do this. So I would, and I am going to call the attorneys generals on this one, because this looks like an agreement outside of a public meeting, and it looks very unethical. So I am going to be calling. So
All right.
additionally, it's a lot of money wasted for the taxpayer. It's a lot of money to do a ballot question and all this hoo-ha. It's wrong, and it's money that has been misrepresented as being isolated to the schools, seeing that the schools have basically absorbed a capital cost for us last year using the E&D that would have allowed them to fluctuate. That's the money that's used to fluctuate with state aid, their E&D. And they have used it to give back to the town and the town's departments. This should have been, if you needed a properly done override, if we're going to pay the expense of a ballot question, I will
All right.
ask you to reconsider this.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rosemary. And just remember, we want to try to maintain the decorum here,
I
right?
am trying my
All-
best,
all-
trust me.
All comments
best I
make
can
sense,
get.
but the loud ones
Thank
don't
you.
make more sense. Just keep it that way.
Thank you, dear Rick.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, thank you.
Sean?
Keep in mind Hanson's perspective as well, because I think if the override didn't pass and the people spoke and said, you know what, we've heard from the school, we understand what's at stake and we don't support it, I think Hanson's pretty firm on the 5% as we are. You know, so that's two parties involved that have kind of said, this is what we're willing to do. You know what I mean? I'm optimistic that people will say, hey, we think that the schools are doing good work and this is money well spent and they'll support it. But I think that's ultimately how it'll play out. I mean, it could go to that next step where they'll come back with another number, you know what I mean? But
Which is cheaper. A lot cheaper. To do it the proper way.
Rosemary.
is cheaper.
Justin?
I was just going to ask for clarification. What is the added expense question to a town election we're already holding?
The added expense is the ballots you print up, adding the extra things on the ballots, the print up here, everything. What do we, okay.
Okay, good question,
Advertising,
thank
all
you.
of those things. And you're isolating, you are isolating the majority to vote on a minority, a legal minority group. So basically.
Rosemary, that question was answered.
So there's a risk that they will not properly service equitably.
Okay, thank you. So I guess, so what we're going to focus on tonight then, I think everybody kind of understand what can happen, I guess, when we get to the first article at town meeting. It can go down this path or it can go down this path, and they're two very separate and distinct paths, right? So I just think we should be prepared, everybody should be prepared for both paths, right? Sean?
just to clarify, from my perspective, it feels like there's two paths. Either there's gonna be an override that the town supports, and then they're gonna fund to the full assessment, or we're gonna drop to the 5%. Those are the two fundamental paths. It would be terrible if if on the town meeting floor, they said, we voted against putting the override on the ballot. That's the worst case scenario.
Not in the mind of the finance
No, it
committee.
isn't. No, it isn't actually. You're
So there are more than two paths.
dangerous
That's what I'm-
path.
What we're trying to say is, we're trying to recognize that there are more than two ways that this could go. I mean, there's not just two paths. It's not 7% or 5%. It's that the town recognizes that this isn't the most fiscally prudent idea to have a $500,000 override in fiscal '25. That is the message from the finance committee. That's what's gonna be debated on the floor when we do the first, article on the warrant. And if the town says yes, then we go to the next step. If they say no, we're just going about town meeting like we have a typical assessment from the schools, and we're voting it from there. Rosemary, then Kathleen.
I want to, and now that we're on this topic, I'm going to bring up the fiscally irresponsible statements that were made. And part of the reason why having E&D used every single year on things that our town was supposed to pay for, and then putting it on this whole override in the school, pretty much the same amount that you pulled back from collecting last year by $500,000. All of this, to me, seems like erratic finances that only pull from one demographic. There is risk to that, but ultimately, we have to use real documents, real studies. We can't use propaganda or what somebody quickly said in a meeting. The real document of the Madden report is about revenue collection, and you pulled back from the levy by $500,000, yes, last year. $500,000.
We've
You
discussed
did,
this
and you
already.
can say it was anything else, but I've already gone
Okay,
to
Rosemary,
30
that's
different
it. Yeah,
assessors. Everybody is.
We're done with that topic. We're done with that topic. We
And you
discussed.
can say this, but if it's
Rosemary,
done-
I'm gonna have to stop
Okay.
you, and if you continue to talk, you're
Okay.
gonna leave the meeting.
All
I
right.
don't want anybody to leave the meeting.
Okay, so if something's missaid,
You have an opportunity to speak on every topic.
okay, thank you.
Respect the opportunities that the other people are
Okay,
relinquishing for your time.
thank you.
Kathleen.
So here's my take on if Article 1, we'll call it that, the override, if that fails, we have to vote the 19,135,687. We have to vote the assessment. So as long as we're all
agreed.
in agreement in that. So there's no point in going through the without override, with override. If the first question fails, there's the town meeting votes not to support an override, then we go right to an Article 2 that includes 19,135,687 for the operating assessment. So we're all in agreement on that.
So that's where we really want to get to for this meeting, is we want to talk about, and we want to have the input from the town administrator and the board of selectmen when the finance committee comes up with an alternative to having a $500,000 override. And understand that we would prefer to have a collaboration with the board of selectmen and the town administrator in that path forward, right? So Kathleen has worked diligently in the last 2 days to come up with a scenario that doesn't have an override component. So that is what the voters are going to have for a recommendation if in fact I think it's Article 47 fails on the override, on the warrant, right?
Yeah, Justin had a question.
You, Justin.
So I was just I listened to the beginning of the last meeting that I missed, and kind of to Rosemary's point, if you want to belabor the free cash used to balance the budget question at the end last year.
Would you read the whole?
Rosemary,
So-
you're out of order.
If you read Article 2, it says raise and appropriate. So any money that we don't have available to raise and appropriate has to come from another source. We use the article, this year it is Article 53, last year it was a different number, to appropriate a sum of money from free cash and set funds to reduce the amount raised and appropriated by taxation. So that's all that does. It's, last year we had, I think the excess levy was 250, 270,000, something in that ballpark. And the article that we used for free cash was 400 and something thousand. Yeah, so we did not have enough money to raise and appropriate, so we needed to use free cash to balance it. We probably could have cut back a little bit. I wish we'd used more of the excess levy, but it was a guess in May that came back late in the year. So that's all that was.
Just quickly, I did run this because I was in 30 different towns this past week, and I had an opportunity to bring that into many different town administrators and many different assessors, and this.
He opened the door, right?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So
Yes, Judge.
yeah. So many different towns, I said, and they would to reduce taxation. Essentially, it did exactly that. It pulled $500,000 from available taxation of this year.
Okay, so we have several different ways to interpret it, right?
In Article 2 and pulled back the overappropriation in Article 40.
So it was a mistake of the town.
No.
Well, no, we didn't write. So if you'll remember, this is the way that Frank used to do it. Lincoln had a different process where in Article 2 he would write a number of different sources of revenues. And he would just, Article 2, raise and appropriate from, ambulance was gone by then, but from free cash, whatever.
I guess this is the only
On
town.
to Article
Hold
2.
on.
This was the way that we used to do it. and Mary Beth's gone back to that system.
Okay.
Where you appropriate, and then if you over appropriate, you have to come back with something else. We don't know what the number is until the end of the warrant, so we have a question at the end.
Thank you, that is not.
So I think it's clear.
Many,
You've-
many.
Okay, Rosemary, you
put
had
that-
your opportunity,
Yeah.
you have shared
Okay.
all of the
I just-
information.
I don't want
I don't think we need to
misinformation.
belabor that point. Mary Beth?
My question goes back to Kathleen. So you're correct. If the question fails, we would need to vote the full assessment.
Right.
But if the question passes, where are your recommendations going to be for that?
We haven't even started.
No, what I'm saying is, you're saying, are you making recommendations on both or just on one? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, to me, it's difficult to
I
make.
can add a column.
Yeah, I know. To me, it really has to wait till it goes to the ballot box to see if the assessment moves forward.
And it can't, because we
And
can
it-
tell me first.
Right.
Yeah.
That
So what do
doesn't
you,
work.
so what do you finish with? You know, how do you finish town meeting? If they say yes, we gotta go through both scenarios?
No. If they say yes, we would hope to defer to the selectmen recommended with override. If they pass the article, so I certainly can add another column for finance recommendations.
Well,
but
we're gonna
it
need
has to
two
be-
then, I guess, yeah, you're right.
So you could split the recommendations, you know, it's with / without.
Right.
Right.
That's the way we could use this paper as it is today.
Yeah.
Right,
But I think we do have to do,
I guess we have to do
that's
both.
what I'm
Okay.
thinking.
you know, and
I agree.
I don't know if it matters which one we start with. to
Right,
tell you the truth,
I
right?
don't think it matters
It
either.
doesn't.
I do think we have to approach it, though, from do the withs and then the withouts. I don't
Yeah.
want to do line and do with and without, because I think we have to see the whole picture as to what it looks like when we make our recommendations,
Yeah.
particularly on the without override.
Right.
Because that's where the real cuts are hitting.
Right.
I think that's where we'll have our bigger conversations,
I think you're right.
disagreements about
I
it.
think we start with that, because the homework has been done, right, for everyone, for the finance committee to make recommendations on without an override. And then, you're right, we're gonna have to do that other column.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't think we have any other option.
It's called a contingency. It is only supposed to be, there really is, in most towns and best practices, only one Article 2. And the selectmen's budget was a quirky thing that I don't understand why we did, but isn't really normal practice. It's a really, it's avoiding oversight, really. And then a contingency budget, so there should be only two budgets presented here. It should be.
There are two recommendations gonna be made, two
Yeah.
columns,
And it should
that
be
Mary Beth said, you're gonna add to the end of this
I added the
document.
column.
Yeah,
contingency and the Article 2.
right. Go ahead, Mike.
So, Mary Beth, this is maybe for you. Article 49 is very specific that this is where we're asking for the appropriation outside of levy of Prop 2.5, right, for the 509, et cetera. If the override is not approved, does this now become, we not present Article 49?
So I'm sorry, say that again. If the article warrant, we're gonna take that out of order,
Correct,
and then we're going to have the floor vote on that.
yes.
And if your question
If they
is,
say, no, we're not going to allow for an override,
it's not gonna allow for an override, then at that point, we would need to look at the selectmen recommend without override, which reflects the full assessment for the district.
understood. So that means that we would not put Article 49 out at that point. We'd,
Sorry.
Right.
It wouldn't be on the
What do you mean?
ballot.
We'd be taking it.
we would not be
Order.
presenting it though at town
It was
meeting?
already presented.
No, we were gonna present at the beginning of the meeting.
Shouldn't be.
We're going to take
Okay.
it out of order.
49 is the one.
49 will go to
That'll
the
be the
ballot.
first one to be
All
done.
right, that's what,
And
that's
that will
what, I
help
was
us
getting lost on
determine
which
which
one.
path to go.
Okay, thank
Right.
you, sorry.
Nope, no problem.
Rosemary.
I don't believe the selectmen recommended all. I think there's so many
I-
numbers here.
I
that
think
there
we
could be
know
confusion.
that.
Well, it would be so many numbers that it'd be so confusing and obfuscating to the.
All right, for clarification, right, and
Yep,
and
thank you.
maybe you can help me, is when we refer to what the voters are going to be considering, it's the FinCom recommendations. You keep going back to select and recommend column,
Right,
okay?
Right,
So
that's
that
how
may
it's
or
titled.
not be, may or may not be the same column, when you get to our, the 5% or the contingent. But, I mean, historically, I mean, if you look back, just for a point of information,
Mm-hmm.
when the town administrator drafts a draft warrant, submits it to the Board of Selectmen. It then transfers from TA recommended budget to Selectmen recommended budget. And then from there, it goes to the Finance Committee in its entirety or a modification thereof.
Right.
And then that's what gets presented at town meeting.
Right, so it
So-
would still be selectmen recommend at
No.
town meeting, is that what you're saying?
No.
It would never be.
But
Actually,
we
it
still
shouldn't be.
have the
The
column,
column can stay there, right? But the taxpayers aren't considering that column at all,
right, no, they're considering
Right.
the FinCom.
right?
Yep,
Just quickly, no, actually, it should not be there. The Article 2 is exclusively owned by the Finance Committee. The Article 2 is determined in every capacity by the Finance Committee. So it will be a decision and a vote from the Finance Committee to determine if there is a budget that has not been recommended by the Finance Committee. The Article 2 is nothing to do with the selectmen, if you want to put another piece of paper, but it's not the Article.
Well, I think historically, the selectmen
Correct.
lines have remained on the budget
And they
article
will
too.
now, right.
And we gave away $500,000 doing that, so I don't know if that's a big deal.
incorrect.
Are you gonna editorialize every point?
I think this is, the people want to hear this.
Oh, so you're speaking to the microphone.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
What happens when?
All right, so I think this is a good point. If everybody's kind of on the same page on, like, how town meeting could go, now the discussion could then move forward. I think it's time to we move into what the Finance Committee's recommendations will be if the town votes not to have an override for 509,000, right? So I'm gonna turn it over to Kathleen, because like I said, she did some homework. And what we wanna do from there is have a roundtable discussion about the merits and mindful that this isn't what the selectmen are recommending, right? It's obvious. But if you had, keep in your mind, if you had an opportunity to recommend something that wasn't part of an override, we're looking for input. Is that fair? All right, so with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so I took the spreadsheet that you generated, Mary Beth, on April 17th, and I'm calling that Article 2/MVC, because I will send this spreadsheet to you. So Mary Beth Carter's Article 2. And I copied and pasted it so that I now have Article 2 FinCom. And what I've done is I haven't touched a single line item that you've recommended other than the school assessment. Your recommendation is $18,626,475, and I am recommending to my colleagues on the Finance Committee that we recommend $19,135,687. We go all the way down to the bottom of total Article 2, and is there a deficit? There definitely is, and guess what that deficit is? $509,212.
509,000.
509,000, yes, sorry, $509,212.
Talking the whole state budget.
Which will be, and it says, free cash to balance deficit. Where is that free cash coming from? So then I went to fund balance. So and I can't thank you enough for providing all this information, because this isn't something that I could possibly do. Knowledge is power. You've provided me with an incredible amount of information to be able to come up with an alternative recommendation. So I have maintained fund balance, I've renamed it fund balance -MVC. I copied that, pasted it into a new tab, and it's now fund balance -FinCom. And I am making recommendations to the Finance Committee that will allow us to use, excuse me, $509,212 in free cash to fund the school article. A total of, let me see, there are capital articles here, there are other articles that are not capital, like fire, previous bills, those are all in the free cash column. I am suggesting that some of the capital articles be funded out of capital stabilization. I have questions about a couple of the articles that I'm not sure that I even support. So if I don't support it, then they don't get funded. I need more information. But at the end of the day, we would be taking out $975,919 in free cash. That would leave a free cash balance of $402,836. So I haven't wiped out the free cash. I have used, I believe it's $190,140 from capital stabilization, which has a balance right now of $681,142. And then some of the articles, as I said, I'm not ready to support without additional information. But if those other articles were fully funded, there is still enough money in free cash to fund them. Right now, they're being recommended to be funded from free cash anyway. So it's just if we approve them, then there's money to pay for them. If we don't approve them, then it reduces the free cash that we use. And that's the simplest explanation I can give you.
So is there a way that we can go to the warrant and do the corresponding articles that you are considering changing the funding source for?
Yes.
I think maybe that's a good place to start, if everybody's amenable with that. Does anybody have general questions on the process? Sean?
Just suggesting that we use one-time money in an operating budget.
Yeah, we talked about that
Before,
Tuesday
the
night.
answer is
Right,
yes.
so I could not support that.
That's okay.
So again, we're looking for input, good and bad. We'll take that. Rosemary?
I think it's smarter than using next year's taxation. I think, which is what you guys did last year and what you have at the back of that. I think it's a lot smarter to do that.
Okay. Mary Beth? Did you have your hand up?
I did,
Okay.
I did.
It was like half up.
What's that?
Do I really want to ask this question?
No, it's like, we've thought of all this.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
You know what I'm saying? But we've thought about.
I respect you and you respect me.
We
so there's
do,
no
right, absolutely. And
animosity
we
here.
don't always agree, but we like each other, so, and we can work well together. But we have thought about this, right? Taking free cash, taking one-time funds. You know, last year, it was quite a battle down on the floor, people remember, where it was finally decided to go from 5%, we were trying to hold the line, it ended up at like 5.62. It was a difference of $163,000. And now, we're just saying, go against our, we're trying to hold the line here and not use
One-time
one-time
money.
money.
We
So now we're
understand,
breaking
yeah.
that rule.
Yeah.
Second of all, we're just saying, we said 5%, they came in more than double, 1103, down to 7.87, and just use not 161 that we used last year, which I don't want to use any, but 509. We've thought about this, and we've thought about taking away from the town and the capital projects, and we want something that works for everybody, and doing the 509,000 out of the town after I've already stripped off over $1 million. If you look, and I'd like you to look carefully at what the departments requested compared to what I gave them. In some cases, I gave them less than what they got in 24. Because like I told you, I took 24 year to date, I took all of 23, and I took all of 22. So basically what I built is a zero-based budget, not a level fund, and not even close to a level service. You'll hear the district talk about level service all the time, which is very different from level fund. And I actually did something different than level fund, a zero, which brings it even lower in many cases. So
Yep.
that's
Okay.
what I want to say on that.
So let's go one step further. Now, last meeting on Tuesday, you talked about what would be in the Article 2. What would the selectmen's budget look like if the override failed? Can you just review those lines?
Oh, the key items
Right.
that would be...
You said like 2 firemen.
Correct. I have all that, yeah.
Can we just take a look and review that, right?
Sure.
And I just want to be clear that this, should the override fail at the time in town meeting, and we go to the 7.87 assessment, where your recommendations that now are the selectmen's recommendations are going to stay the same from now to town meeting. Is that correct?
As it is today, the selectmen will vote on it on Tuesday.
Okay.
But yes,
Okay,
and
so here's the highlights,
here are the
or
highlights,
the lowlights.
the lowlights, very low lights. And some of these aren't obvious when people look at the budget. because of all of the services, it's such a big number there, but I will say the first one is the assessors. They would lose one position, clerical position. And these are highlighted in yellow, but I'll go over them again. And the next one I show is the town clerk. The town clerk's office would lose the clerical position in that office. The next one is all of the services. That is
For which department?
for this, I'm sorry, that's the police department. That is 3 positions three officers they would lose. The fire department, 3 officers. I mean firefighters, sorry about that. Go down to highway and parks, they will lose 1 person. The health department will lose the clerical position there. Council on Aging, they have 2 part-time people over there, and they will lose 1 person at the Council
One of
on
the
Aging.
part-time?
One of the part-time people. There's 2 part-timers. So they will lose 1, and let me take a look and see. And I believe that's it for the personnel that will be lost.
Just because I
Sure.
agree with almost everything you said, even though my orders are a bit different. But I thought there was also a
Maybe I missed it scrolling.
Library.
technology, cut the tech specialist.
Nope. When I revised the budget, I did restore a few positions.
I'm not looking to make that as a recommendation, by the
No,
way.
no, that is not one that is not in this version. After the school recertified and I went back through the budget and reworked the numbers, the payroll clerk was added back. That was a position that was cut. To me, with the finance office, that's not a place you want to cut. And the technology specialist was also added back.
So I'll need to go back and bring that budget. We have so many budgets to juggle out there right now. That was one position that I thought I was still on the chopping block.
Okay, no.
And is the building inspector's position being reduced to part-time?
No, and that wasn't on the prior budget.
I have a budget
Oh, what's that on there?
that was $59,654 for the building
Yeah,
inspector.
no, that's restored.
That's restored,
Yep.
okay. Great.
All right, so I think we have a baseline, right, to
Yep.
then make recommendations,
I just need to get the right budget to compare over the weekend.
okay?
But thank you for that.
All right, and then, so maybe we take a look at the Article 2 with the override, right? And that's assuming that is gonna end up at 5, right? That's where it could end up at something else, is that correct? Is everybody on board with looking at this line, knowing that if in fact this article, we wait for the ballot, right? I mean, we have
Not
to
the
wait,
ballot, the article.
right? And then we have to wait for the election to find out if the override passes, right? We won't go to this unless,
We will go, I would think that we would vote if the warrant article passes to take it to the citizens on a ballot,
yep,
then we will move forward with the 5% all the way, down. That would be the hope.
right, okay.
And then if it does fail, it's a rejected budget and it goes
It
back.
goes back, and then it could come back at anything.
It could,
Yeah, okay.
it could.
All right, so I think then we're really gonna have to do this based on what the possibilities are at town meeting, right? We have to
Yeah.
have both columns
I
as
agree.
recommendations from the finance
I
committee.
agree.
Okay. All right, so, John, go ahead.
A couple of points.
Sure.
First of all, I still think it's illegal. And I agree to a certain degree with Rosemary. That's not to invite more comment. But the other thing is, I will not vote for what was just proposed. Cutting out 3 firefighters at a time when it's still taking longer to get up to South Shore Hospital with patients in an ambulance. And as far as the police, I would not go along with cutting 3 policemen when you're not meeting the typical shift number as it stands now, and you're only going to make matters worse. And it would be better if I was there in the room. But I have a bit of a problem with 3 police, 3 fire, and what is it? Less than 1% of the selectmen's budget is
Yeah.
being reduced.
In that scenario, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't find that acceptable.
All right, so John, what we're still gonna do here, after we finish with this, we're just kind of doing a summary overview. But what we intend to do is go page by page and question line items as we do for town meeting. So you'll have the opportunity to chime in on any other department that you think should be changed or their budget line should be modified instead of the ones that the town administrator and consequently the selectmen are recommending. So you still have plenty of opportunity for that input.
One last question, a
Yeah.
general question. After the issue of an override or no override, which I still question, but once that's addressed, what is the problem with basically suspending town meeting until a vote is taken on the ballot? And then come back and act however you need to based on having the will of the people having been spoken in the ballot.
Yeah, I just don't think that would be precedent setting. I don't think that's ever been the case. You're talking about an expense now too. You're having 2 town meetings, for the same purpose. So yeah,
Well, you're suspending the one town meeting until you get an outcome. And I'm not going to necessarily say that my memory is perfect, but I wouldn't think there's a problem with the concept.
Okay, yeah, well, your point's well taken. And I think we've already done the. There's a certain amount of time that you have to notify the residents about a town meeting, right? So now you're talking about notifying them for a subsequent town meeting after the election. Is that what you're?
Finish the existing town meeting.
Oh, I see. Oh, so table the business of the town meeting, subject to. Okay, yeah, well, that's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
Rosemary.
I have a question. Why are not the vocational schools bills and some of those busing on an override? We see larger increases coming for those. They're also regional schools. Why is it targeted our best deal for an education? The cheapest one, the best deal. Why is that the one when we know we're going into hold harmless? And we've been in hold harmless now. Best practices are that hold harmless is a temporary state. We've been in it in 11 years. Hold harmless is the equivalent of lots of people dying because your ambulance can't get rid to them. Your equivalent of saying your product does not meet your citizens' wants. And 800 children leaving tells you you are not producing a product that the citizens want. Now, it's your lowest one. Why is this the one you're going after? It's not fiscally responsible. It's not best practices. You have to get it to a point where it's a product the citizens want. We're funneling children out to other, more expensive options that maybe they don't want. We have a rate of, in our vocationary school, we are over prescriber, and since that's supposed to be for a vacation, we have large amounts of people using it as a way to get to college. So the flaw is in your idea of underfunding. We could do the whole process a lot cheaper and keep kids over prescribing into other schools if we fund it properly and get that whole time list. Whole time list isn't looking at a data point. It isn't. It's making sure that the product is good enough to stay in.
Okay, so Rosemary, your question is why aren't the other vocational schools part of the
Being
override?
considered.
Why aren't they being considered? Sean?
I can only speak for myself, but basically, their other enrollments are increasing. That's why it's directly tied to enrollment. There's 14 extra students with South Shore Tech, and Whitman Hanson enrollment is decreasing. That may change in the next year or so with Whitman Hanson, but as of right now, with a decreased enrollment, you have less funding from the state with increased demand. You fund it. It does look like from South Shore Tech that we use that, very well, but it's going to have to pull back a little bit. So it looks like over the next 5 years, more people will likely, from other towns, will likely subscribe into South Shore Tech, and us being pulled back to the original seats that we had.
Taking up our
They
own
just
seats,
increased the
Right.
seats. They
not
just
having
increased it.
Okay, Mike.
seats.
So I want to be clear about this. Do we know why our enrollment is down? There's an assumption that we are not offering a service that's provided. It could just be that people say, I would rather be a carpenter or a plumber, and I'm going to South Shore Votech. And we do not offer those programs, nor should we in our school. It would be cost prohibitive to try and put that into the school system. I think we need to understand that. It's kind of outside of the auspices of this discussion, but I think it's an important thing for us to look at, is what is the reason? Because I feel like we potentially could be starting from a fallacy, right? It's not that you're wrong, I just don't know that you're
I know
right.
I'm not.
Oh, I don't know
But
that you're.
I
Remember, I was a
understand.
teacher
I
for a
understand.
long, long time.
I understand.
And there's a bunch of reasons, and I think I'd like to know what those reasons are. Because that would allow us to take action, or the schools to take action, if there's something actionable.
Okay.
All right, so I got
So I'm
Rosemary and then Justin.
it was, okay, so when you are in the lower 1% of funding, and funding is directly connected to the product, over and over again, and you're a teacher, you should know that I can send you all the data.
Brockton and in Boston
Yeah.
English,
Yeah,
yes,
yes.
which are not known to be highly, they
Funded.
don't have a lot of money.
So they are directly related. So when you are in the lower 1%, and we're only in the lower 5%, but our regional schools are funded. I mean, the kids are getting their own, the regional schools, the other regional schools are funded to average to slightly above average, right? Not incredibly, but it does produce a funneling. We have a larger percent of kids using it to go to college. I mean, we have those numbers were 50% of those kids from VOCAC going to college. So they're not going into the vocation, they're going to college.
Okay,
we're
so we are
funneling.
drifting a little.
Yeah.
Let me
Well,
go
I
to,
do think they need to be addressed.
Yep, thank you, Rosemary.
Yep.
And Mike, it's a good question. I thought about this a lot because hold harmless is probably the biggest financial burden we're facing,
Yeah.
at least in the short term. And I do think a lot of the problem is driven by just our population aging. So people my age can't afford to move to Whitman. I have one kid, my parents have four, and I graduated around the time that enrollment peaked. So like it's not that hard to draw the lines on just, it's very difficult to move to this area now. There aren't starter homes available because people are aging in place and the seniors can't vacate their homes to move to more affordable living for themselves. So it's just, we're all bottlenecked. And I think that's some of the things the town is trying to solve with the MTA Communities Act, with some of the zoning reforms we're looking at. So it's not necessarily a school problem that our enrollment's declining. It's part of a town problem.
If I can just, I know because you're my neighbor, and well, we're my neighbor.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting that when you and my son graduated, that was a brand new school.
Yeah.
So not putting money into the schools clearly was not the issue, and it's from that point on, those 11 years since, enrollment goes down. So that's why I'm questioning this belief that what we're talking about. But again, I think I'd like to call the question. Let's get back to what we're supposed to be
Right,
doing.
well, I got Kathleen, she's got her hand up too.
I want to come back to what John said and pursue the idea that if the ballot question, which is now Article 49 but will become Article whatever, if it passes, I like the idea of adjourning town meeting, having the election, knowing that the override will be funded or will not be funded, and then reconvening town meeting to continue the business at hand, knowing whether or not we have the money to fully support the schools in two particles, with the override and with the Article 2, or if the override fails, then we need to put the 19 million back into Article 2, because we have to vote on the full assessment given to us by the school.
Yep, good point. And John, yeah, that was a good suggestion, and we're gonna go to Sean.
I just think in some ways just overthinking this. The reason for the override is because we're in the hold harmless situation and because the ESSA money. It's pretty obvious. I think people in town know that's the case. When they're voting for the $500,000, they're saying, yes, money's coming off the table, and we know that hold harmless is a difficult situation, so we're gonna fund them one more year, you know what I mean? And this is gonna keep them kind of where they're at. If it doesn't pass, then the townspeople have made their voice, and they said it didn't pass, and we dropped to the 5%. That's the purpose of the override. Well, I don't think it would be much different than if there was an override for 4 firemen. If people supported the override for the 4 firemen, it would then get funded. If they didn't, then it wouldn't. You know what I mean? So the purpose of the override is directly tied to the school. That's why we're in this situation.
But I think it goes deeper than that, and I think it's been explained in this room that the reason that the finance committee isn't supporting this override is because it doesn't go far enough. It is a Band-Aid approach for a completely short-term financial plan, and we need an operational override that addresses the next 5 years. And that's what the message is going to be to the voters. It's not as simple as you put it, Sean. It's not. That's not the decision.
If we come out of hold harmless, then we don't need an override.
You make it sound very simple, but the $500,000 override is not a long-term solution to our problem. That's simply the message that I think we're trying to send. Mm-hmm. So, Kathleen, you had.
And the other part is, we haven't even started. We've been meeting since November. Meeting with all the budget managers.
Yeah.
And when I look at this, it's like, why did we have all these meetings?
Yeah, I know.
If we don't even get to discuss Mary Holland's request for janitorial services for the Council on Aging, if that's not in your recommendation, I'm probably going to suggest that we put more money into the Council on Aging.
It's in there.
Yeah. Well, that's a good answer. The other night you led me to believe that when I said janitorial services, I got a sort of negative feedback. It's like,
yeah.
And there are other issues. There were other presentations. Other department heads made impressive cases for increasing. So it took me a while to put together this first budget, and I'm still working on what if for the second budget, and I have until Sunday night to come up with that and send it to Rick for the committee to consider. I think that it's not just the schools that need additional funding. There are other departments in this town that desperately need additional funding, and I know that one of the plans that has been floated around is that if we wait until the unfunded pension liability is paid off in 5 years, then we can take a deep breath. I can't hold my breath for 5 years. I think it's unfair to not just the schools, but to all of the other departments in town that desperately need more money, legitimately need more money, and we are creating a false Article 2 by saying our goal is to balance the budget. Our goal is, yes, we have to balance the budget. That's a rule. That's a law. But there's free cash there to balance the budget, and it doesn't have to just be used for the schools. If there is money that has already been goes into different coffers that will allow us to provide the services that people need and not ask them for an override for $500,000, that's the avenue that I want to pursue.
Mary Beth.
But using one-time monies is not the best practice, right? And we were criticized for it last year.
And we can't keep using the same arguments about
Right.
what we're recommending to do.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that, we tried not to do that this year, to cut back on departments quite a bit. Yes, we did. I dashed their hopes and dreams. Mm-hmm. But still, it's a budget that works for the town to give the schools the 5%.
Rosemary.
Okay, Sean was correct. Hold harmless would make it so we probably, putting Article in harmless, would seriously make it so that we do not have to have a big override. He is correct there. Now, the path in which he's planning on doesn't. Now, somebody mentioned compounding. My parents had 4 kids, I had 1. But your sibling had 5. And your other sibling might have. So you've already surpassed the amount of children your parents have for the housing in the town.
Rosemary.
So, no, no, because I don't want, I've been really upset about misleading math and information in this meeting. And I don't want to wait another year for everybody to go, oh yeah, Rosemary, you were right. I want everyone to be aware now.
I think we're all gonna listen to everything everyone has to
Okay,
say.
and I am, and
And hopefully,
please don't
more
cut me
than,
off. Thank you so much. I do want to make sure
Rosemary,
that.
we have to get through this meeting.
Exactly.
So I
This is
will
a
cut you
whole-
off
this
if
is
I
a
think it's in
whole-
the best interest of the meeting.
The whole
This
time.
is one of those times.
That was okay. Hold harmless. We do not have a declining amount of individuals being born from the time that we were younger. If my parents had 5 children and each of us had 2, or some had 1 and some had 3, we produce more than 5 children. That's how
Really?
compounding, you don't have to compound at the same rate.
Okay,
So we will
that's
have
the end of
equal
that.
to the amount of children
Rosemary,
we once had.
you're done. Thank you.
So
Just quickly,
Go ahead.
we had done.
you seem to be convinced that we need to have this big override, and by having a $500,000 override, that really significantly lessens our ability to get that big one passed. I'm not convinced that we need a big one.
Okay.
And I think that's a critical difference between
Sure.
us. I think if the school's at 5%, the override wasn't passed and we fund them at 5%, we still step forward in a sustainable way. We're not using one-time funds and we're still on stable ground. Next year can come and we can deal with what next year will bring, but it's not guaranteed that a big override will be there.
Right.
If, on the other hand, if people support the override, $509,000, then we step forward and we're still on a sustainable path. We didn't use any one-time funds.
Okay.
And then
But this is the same argument you've been continuing to make, right? I think this meeting is beyond debating the merits of an override. We now have to make recommendations for this warrant and these articles, right? You're not going to change the mind of the 8 people here. You have one opinion, and we have another opinion. Neither opinion is wrong, right? We have to expect to get feedback from the taxpayers at town meeting. They're the ones that are going to decide. You're not going to sway anyone here with the constant repetition of what you feel is the best interest, right? So we're saying, yes, it's fiscally irresponsible to use one-time money to balance the budget. This is the best path forward in the minds of this committee. Simple as that. I don't think we have to belabor that point. We need to move on.
I agree.
Rosemary.
Okay. We got a 5-year plan from this school. They kept with that 5 for the needs to make a product that people would want. They kept within that. They went below that 5-year plan. We cut them back even further. Ultimately, there is data out there that talks about 20 miles from Boston being something you really don't see the declining enrollment in. Also, Justin brings up a point about housing being affordable. But if people have the money, there's parents with money that can afford those houses, but they will only buy them in a quality education. That we're going to be also talking. People can't move because their home values are about $100,000 less than they should be. So you're sort of freezing seniors by not making sure you're educational. You're freezing them in a spot where they can't afford something if you don't make your education a good place where people will buy their home. So this method of not addressing this funding is really, and addressing our
All right,
product.
so we're done with that discussion. We are completely done with deciding whether or not this committee does or does not support an override, right? I think the merits, everyone makes good points, right?
Yeah.
But we gotta move forward.
Gotta move forward
We
and
have to move forward.
taxpayers.
All right, so we're now at the point, I think, where we're gonna just take a general review of the Article 2 with the override. And I apologize for speaking so slowly, but this is a hugely confusing way to do this. And I'm more inclined to go with John Noon's suggestion and wait for the ballot to decide which path to move forward on. I think it's John, I have to agree with you that it's a good suggestion. And I guess, I don't know if we have to put it to town council or if we can
Correct.
put it to
I would
find out
definitely
if,
put it to town council. You want to be careful that we don't get into that 1/12 budget time frame, which was a nightmare for everybody, for the
Right.
schools, for the town.
but I just think this is gonna be so confusing. It's
Yeah.
confusing for me to run the meeting.
It's really not that confusing.
Well, for the
Good,
regular
for you,
people.
thank you. I'd gladly switch places with you today, so,
Chair,
go ahead.
I asked my wife last night, you know, she doesn't really pay attention to a lot. She does, but she doesn't get into it. So I asked her as a taxpayer, what do you think? And one thing she has said, she's come to many town meetings and she talks about how it's very confusing as it is, the way things are worded and how quickly it goes and the lack of, that the information getting out, you know, within the last month or so. So this, I think a lot of people might be voting, just listening to people, you know, that the direction they're going, the yeas and the nays. I think people will get confused. I'm wondering on what John's suggestion was. I mean, I guess in the past, town meetings have been suspended till the next night. They've asked townspeople to come back.
Right.
And in COVID, we had, I know it was a different scenario, but we had to move things out. And that apparently was within the law for whatever was going on then. I'm not an
Good
expert.
Because of COVID, it
Yeah.
was within.
We were allowed, yeah.
Right.
I think
I'm
that's
sure.
the year we went to the 1/12 budget, and that was
We never
a
did.
disaster.
Yeah,
We did it
we didn't get that far.
No, we
Went
didn't.
to 1/12 budget.
Because
No.
both Whitman and Hanson compromised.
We
That was the year
compromised.
of the statutory method. And instead of going directly to statutory, there was a compromise proposed by people that split the $1 million that should have immediately been shifted onto Hanson. Whitman agreed to pay half of that $1 million shift. And then in fiscal
Wouldn't be here
'22,
if they paid
the
that.
full statutory method. There never was a 1/12 budget because the Commission of Education would have said, here's how much you have to spend in August, here's how much you have to
That
spend
town
in
meeting
July.
was held in July, so the town
Yes.
was in 1/12.
1/12 budget.
That was
most
during
certainly.
Was it a 1/12 budget?
Yes.
Yeah,
The
but the
school was
school,
technically in a 1/12 budget, but they didn't have any salaries to be paid at the time, so they didn't.
All right, yeah, because it was July.
Ken, like,
It wasn't implemented, but it was in play.
do that again. The
But
1/12
anyways,
budget.
I totally agree.
It was
Can that
terrible.
is that a possibility?
Right.
Because
So-
it seems like a lot of the work that's being done by everybody, maybe all for naught.
Right,
You know.
Say that.
I know.
Well, that's what I mean.
Well,
I mean,
especially for you. I know how many articles you put together.
well, I mean,
No, I know what you're saying.
differently, you know what I mean.
So I think though, we still need to move
You
forward.
still have to start somewhere.
Right, we still need to have the discussion on one of the scenarios, because if town meeting votes no at the town meeting on the override, then we got one path from there. We have one assessment.
And if it votes yes,
And
you'll
it votes-
make, on the fly, you'll make recommendations that night on every line. I mean, what would you do then if you don't have both?
No, they vote yes, and then we suspend town meeting till
Well, you
after
still have
the
to vote.
election.
It still has to go to the ballot.
Yeah,
That- that-
I would
that-
have to run that by council, that's for
I mean,
sure.
I think it'll probably pass at the town meeting, that it'll get on the ballot, but my bigger concern is when people start to show up to actually vote for it. I think the people that come to town meeting, you know, they're pretty involved, but the other people that don't make it to town meeting, when you start, you know, you see the talk, social media, word goes around, and there's a lot of frustration out there. That's my worry, is that it doesn't pass at the ballot box.
Right. Rosemary.
Okay, there's a couple of problems here. Hate to be that lady, but I can't let it go unsaid. First of all, you're determining, remember the town, to get this, the school has already cut back. And Sean is right in the aspect of, if we get out of hold harmless, guess what? We get a good amount of money. We really can afford education. It's the hold harmless that really does. We should think of it as debt. So if we determine what they need in this override, because they didn't say that they need this much. This is a cutback, and additionally, we have a bunch of grants that are going to end, and then there's still the E&D. They've subsidized the bills for the town by over $1 million point something dollars. So a lot of stuff has been pulled out, and this is much smaller. We're still in the lower 5% of funding. Okay, so
Okay, we gotta move forward.
So you're determining it's going to be seen as their override. That's all they need. They should determine what kind of override they need to get out of hold harmless and understand that hold harmless in the school level, because that is their response. You know, that's their purview, not ours.
Well, they voted an assessment. That's
They
what we
voted
really
an
have to
assessment,
go.
not an override.
Right. So that's what we're going with, Rosemary.
Yep.
We're going with no override and the school's assessment.
So
That's
if
what
we
we're moving
delay
forward.
this and make it presumable that's what they need, that's disingenuous. That's all I'm saying. So I don't think that even should go forward that way. I think it should die. I think the selectmen should not recommend this and go forward in this back. That's what I
Well,
would ask. Because
Okay.
we can't control your warrant article.
Kathleen.
Right, that's yours.
No, I don't have a question.
Oh, I thought you had.
Yeah,
No, my point is, I think John had a great suggestion.
Yeah.
If the town meeting votes yes to go for an override ballot question, we adjourn town meeting, go for the ballot question. If it passes, we come back and finish our business with the ballot having passed. If it doesn't pass, we come back to finish our business with the ballot not having passed. But,
Well, I think then it goes back to the school.
and then it goes back to the schools.
It should go back to the school to
But
determine.
what
the
I'm
override.
talking,
Yeah.
if they vote no, we come back and then we, FinCom, will recommend the $19 million. And the use of free cash
Right.
and capital stabilization and other funding sources.
But we are back to the thing that if that warrant article passes, I mean, if it fails, then we have to move right into this Article 2.
Yes.
So we really need to continue this process. Mike?
Okay, I'm going to actually agree with you here. Let's move to this, because we're talking about the semantics of the operations of the town meeting. That's not our job, right? That's your job. God bless you, right? But our job is, let's make these decisions. I'm looking at the time. I'm on a time clock. Let's start going through these right now, and let's start putting
All
in
right.
some recommendations.
Okay.
Then we're prepared for however it's implemented. John's is a viable plan. I know you've got plans as well, right? Selectmen have their own. However you all want to do it, you run that. We're at least ready to give our recommendation as a committee. That's my 2 cents.
So I think that the first thing we should start with is the warrant, because in the warrant, there are some specific funding sources that Kathleen's scenario changes within the articles of the warrant, right, Kathleen?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with Article 1, which doesn't need a recommendation from
No.
us. Article 2, we're gonna put on hold. The rest of these articles that are following are P articles. John, do you have an electronic copy of this warrant that's dated 4/13/24? On the second page, you'll see the date at the bottom right.
Yeah, I have that warrant.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, and if you need paper copies of anything, let me know. I will bring them over to your house.
No, it's all right.
Okay,
Rick, Sean has a question.
John.
Sorry. If you thought it could be tabled, you would be voting in favor of the override.
No.
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 I was just wanting a clarifying question. I didn't know if you thought it couldn't be tabled, you'd be voting against it. But if you thought it could be tabled, then you'd be voting for it.
I think the scenario was if the warrant article passed, then the motion would be made to suspend town meeting till after the
I
election.
get that, but I was saying, if you thought that the town meeting could be adjourned, would that change you'd be in favor of the override?
Are you asking one
No.
person? Are you asking one person or the committee?
No.
The committee, yeah.
I can tell you.
It's a matter of semantics. I think our position has been clear, right?
Yeah, I think if
We
we
cannot-
ask for an
I
override,
honestly didn't know.
I
I
think
didn't
we
know if you, having the time to wait, would you?
Rosemary, I'm answering the question. Thank you.
you
Thank
can't.
you.
Okay. All right, so Article P4,
P3.
sorry. So when we get to something that is affected by your budget proposal for recommendations from the Finance Committee, just let me know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can move forward with voting these articles as they're presented. And I'm just gonna ask one more time, this warrant is the warrant that the selectmen are going to approve on Tuesday of next week.
Just waiting for some comments to come back from town council, but it won't change the
Just a word on it.
amount. Right, it
Just
just might be
Okay.
technical.
So P3 is appropriation of $525.64 from free cash to pay the following fiscal '23 bills for the fire department. I'll entertain a motion.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Further discussion. All in favor? We gotta go to a voice vote, I hate to tell you.
Yep.
John Noon,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Abstain.
Al,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
and I vote yes. 701, Rosemary.
What is it that you want from me?
No.
That's recording the
It's
vote.
recording. So
All right.
Elizabeth knows.
I'm recording you as an abstention on a prior year bill.
Yeah.
Did you need more information, or
No.
just abstain? Okay.
Just heard the name.
No.
Okay.
Article P4. See if the town will vote to transfer $500 from free cash to be added to the accountant's expense line to supplement the expenses incurred in fiscal '24, or take any other action relative thereto. You have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Further discussion. All in favor? John?
Sure, why not?
Ralph?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Abstain.
Al?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
And I vote yes. 701, Rosemary. Article P5. See if the town will vote to transfer a sum of money, and the sum of money has been,
I have a placeholder there, I spoke with the chief, I have 90,000, let me just double check that. Yes, 90,000 right now.
okay, so that could change,
It would only come down.
okay?
So why are we looking for that? Why are they looking for that additional monies?
To be added to the salaries lines, he's looking, because when he gets to the end of the year, he's projecting a deficit in the salary line. And so this is gonna supplement this year's budget line for salaries. And then that is the amount that he's projecting he'll be short. Is that correct?
Due
That
to
is correct.
overtime and, or additional hires that,
Uh,
Combination.
Unexpected medical absences,
Yep.
and then overtime to deal with the Brockton Hospital closing.
Okay, further questions on Article P5?
Just a comment. This and the next article are two articles that have me extremely concerned.
Yeah.
That I have the fiscal 23, fiscal 24 budget numbers. The fiscal 24 budget number was a 9.61 salary increase. Adding $90,000 makes it a 12.5% salary increase. And I understand medical situations. I understand things happen. You didn't know, you couldn't anticipate it. But this is a significant amount of money.
Mhm.
And it's not one department, it's two departments. The other department had a 6.64% increase in its salary. You add 90K to that, now they're at a 9.46 salary increase for fiscal '24
For the police.
for the police.
Sean?
Just keep in mind, the fire department, they added, I think, about $600,000 in revenue projection next year. So pretty significant revenue increase from the fire department.
And the ambulance.
So you keep that. Yeah.
They will for fiscal
Yeah.
25, they're increasing their ALS1 rate.
All right, they rate
And
the
so
rate.
that will bring
Yeah.
in, he expected at
that
least
was moved to free
600,000.
cash.
I'm sorry?
That income was moved to free cash?
Mike? Just got
Sorry,
other
yeah.
hands.
Part of
Yes.
the projected revenue.
Oh,
It's part of the fiscal '25 projected revenue.
Kathleen, we got a hand up here, please.
I'm very sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
So the police has a sum of money, and you said the fire has to go, has this increase due to, and either one, we don't have a total amount for either one. This is just a sum of money, and what is your projection?
They have
Well-
told me 90,000.
So they
right
both
now,
are coming in
and it could be,
at
yeah.
$90,000.
We don't know the figure though, right?
No, they don't know that until, it changes every day.
So do they have to go to Brockton with the ambulance? That was the reason given for the $90,000.
Brockton's closed.
Right.
I mean, not Brockton, do they have to also travel with the ambulance?
Are you still talking about the fire department?
You said the fire and the police are going up at the same.
Well, we haven't
Oh,
got
no,
to the.
fire. We didn't get
Yeah.
to
We haven't
yet.
got to Article P6 yet. So again, these are prior year bills, projected salary deficits, right? It's not uncommon.
They have
It is
every year.
concerning when you add it to the
Yeah.
last year's salary increase.
Yep.
Yes, it does give some concern.
But they've had personnel issues, people
Yep.
out, people
Yep.
Injured on duty,
It increases every year though, doesn't it?
what increases the amount that they need?
Yeah.
It's year to year.
Year to year.
Has it ever gone down?
I haven't.
Hold on now.
Tracked that.
Okay, Mike, and then Rosemary.
So I'm going to suggest that we have a tracking on this, maybe a 5-year look back. I'm looking at you because you know all this stuff, right? We can get a look back for both of these to see what is the trend on
Yeah.
this. In which case, let's adjust the salaries when we do the budgeting for those departments based upon that trend. that's a realistic view as opposed to the patchwork, which does seem spotty.
Agreed.
Okay, so we're gonna be doing that exercise here for our recommendation for town meeting, right? So when we get to that line item in Article 2, we can certainly have that discussion, right?
That could be, for next year. Like you said, this is to pay for bills we've already incurred, correct?
No.
No.
This finishes out this fiscal year.
Finishes this fiscal year. Thank
And then what we're doing when we get into the articles that aren't P articles and the Article 2 is, this is
you. Oh, right, it's
fiscal
not a P
25.
article, sorry, yeah.
So any P article is this current fiscal year.
And a big factor too is the time with the fire department on what the employees may carry over for their time. So he never really knows the bottom line number until all of that is determined as well.
Okay? Rosemary, then Al?
Thank you. Did we vote something that you can move your budget around so they can pull from other custodial services? I guess they don't have.
Consolidated budget
Yeah,
is the
sorry,
thing
they
she's
do.
referring to.
All other services lines, they can move these things, correct?
Right.
Within the salaries line, they can move, and within the expense line, they
And-
can move.
And so with the fire department, your discussion with the fire chief said that he has no other means to get this additional funds from his existing budget.
Right, correct, he needs it.
So typically, that's how an article gets placed on for a prior year, is they exhaust whatever possible other salary lines they could pull from in order to not need.
But
an
theirs is
supplement.
all of the services, it's one line
Right.
for
Right.
them. It's not like the treasurer's office, if the payroll clerk's line is over and the benefits clerk is under, it doesn't matter, it's all salaries.
Right.
But this is one line, so
Okay.
it's different.
All right, further questions on Article P5? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for Article P5.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Okay, John Noon?
Yes.
Ralph?
I had no question.
We're gonna vote it now.
Okay, yes.
Okay, Mike?
Yes.
Kathleen?
No,
Rosemary?
No, it has no number, no.
Al?
No.
Chuck?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Does anybody have any idea what that adds up to?
2, 3, 4,
Did John vote?
5, 3.
Rosemary, you were a no instead of a.
It has, I
an
can't vote
abstain.
anything without a number, so no. Not on a,
Three
not
noes.
in budget. no.
5-3-0, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
5-3-0.
All right, Article P6, sum of money is,
90,000 as of today.
see if the town will vote to transfer $90,000 from free cash to be added to the police department salary line to supplement the salaries of the police department or take any other action relative thereto. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
I do agree with Rosemary on this. I'm voting on these two based upon the $90,000 quote that we have right now. If that changes,
Then,
I'd like to revisit these votes later.
right, so if that number changes, right, we can. If it
Yeah.
happens before Tuesday, we can reconsider.
Yep.
If we get subsequent information before Tuesday. If it happens before town meeting, we can then re-vote on the floor.
Right.
And we've done that before,
All right.
too. Yeah,
But I'm ready to vote then, thank you.
okay? John?
Yes.
Discussion.
No, he called for it. Did you have one?
I had a discussion, I'm saying the same thing. Until we have a number on this, I don't think it's responsible.
Okay.
And I will reconsider with a number.
All right, and so we'll move to a vote. John?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Kathleen?
No,
Rosemary?
No.
Al?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So 6-2-0. All right, P7, see if the town will vote to appropriate $8,436.44 to pay for a student to pay a prior year invoice for transportation service for Norfolk Agricultural High School for school year 22 to 23, which invoice was not received prior to the close of the fiscal year 23, or take any other action relative thereto. We have a motion.
so moved.
So
Second.
moved.
Second?
Discussion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Yes. Is this more than one student?
This is for Norfolk Aggie, yes it is.
How many students are there?
No, I'd have to get back to you on that, on the
It's for
Norfolk Aggie
transportation.
students.
It's for
I think there's 14 maybe, 16.
Okay.
They're submitting the
So
invoices now.
it's less than 3 times the cost of a Whitman Hanson student, correct?
That is just one bill, and they bill
They
more
bill
than one
you-
time a year.
Okay, the
once a
total
year.
of all of those students, does anything exceed 3 times the cost of our average Whitman Hanson
I
student?
do not have to do that
Okay,
calculation.
I think that needs to be calculated, because if it does, we can go back and,
Yeah, we gave this information to the.
and has that
town
been
administrator.
reviewed?
Yeah, Kathy
Looking
keeps
into
following
that.
up.
Yep,
She has
And-
not followed up on
she
that?
is working on
So
that.
we don't have an answer. Okay, so I'm gonna say.
So
no
it's
to
the
this
Commissioner
one.
of Education that we
Which
need to refer
we need the
to.
answer for
Right,
this
she
one.
has that
Yeah,
information.
okay. Okay, so we have a motion, second further discussion. All in favor, John?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Rosemary?
No, not until I get information
Al?
on that.
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. 710. P8, see if the town will vote to appropriate $136,492 from the Reserve for Appropriation Cable Access Account for Education and Governance Access Program in accordance with the Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F and 3/4, or take any action relative thereto or motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, further discussion on this? This is just to transfer the money over to the cable company. Go ahead, Kathleen?
My question is
Yeah.
there a separate account called Cable Access, special name? This is not coming out of free cash.
Absolutely not.
Zoom for cable.
The money comes in and the money goes out.
Right.
Okay, because
part of our
I'm reading the
bills.
spreadsheet incorrectly then when it looks like this money is coming out of free cash.
Let's take a look.
It may go in and come out of the same account, right? Al, you had a question?
So the question is, the building that they're in, are they paying rent? The town owns that property,
I think we've asked this question several times.
We haven't gotten any answer.
but are they
yet?
paying rent?
Payment in lieu of taxes.
Okay,
I don't have the figures. Maybe I can get that for you.
is the town receiving revenue for this building usage,
Payment in lieu of taxes.
and how much?
I will get that for you.
Okay,
Kathleen, that is under the other column. It's not included in the free cash total.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you. Yep.
okay, so do we have a motion on this one?
Yes.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, no other discussion, we'll move to a vote. John Noon?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
Al?
No.
Chuck?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. It's 710. P9, see if the town will vote to appropriate $45.25 from free cash to pay a prior year invoice to Express for a classified ad for Public Works from June of '23.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor, John?
Discussion. Again, why is this not coming out of their own department? This $45, they can't move something around.
This is a prior year bill, so it does have to, go to this warrant.
As a prior year, it's an unpaid bill from a prior year. This is the only way it can be paid.
Okay. I approve it.
Okay, no further discussion. John?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yep.
Al?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yep.
And I vote yes. 800. All right, Article, now we're into Article 2. And this is where the actual Article 2 summary will be placed. So I would suggest that for tonight's meeting, we get to page 10, if we can. And like I said, if we get to a warrant article that's affected by our recommendation from the vice chair on funding, that we incorporate that language. Now, would the language be staying in the warrant recommendation if the finance committee is recommending that the funding source change will be part of the warrant article?
I don't know, that's never been
I know,
done before.
I know.
So that would be.
That was a question I had, so.
Yeah, I don't wanna say yes to that.
Right.
I have to check that.
So, in my mind, the recommendations for discussion at town meeting are the recommendations of the finance committee. So if in fact that the Board of Selectmen was not in agreement with the funding source, then they would have to make a motion and amend, or vote to amend, and the town meeting would have to take upon the question of an amendment, in my mind, but let's find out. But I think for the purpose of this exercise, we're gonna just go with the recommendation of the finance committee, because that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about this scenario with the accompanying Article 2 for no override scenario, right? Are we in agreement with that?
Yep.
Okay.
So an article, in order for that to be done, an article would need to be amended by the FinCom, is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is, if in fact the article and the funding source is different from whatever is here, we're going to request that the finance committee's recommendation is printed in the warrant.
With
But that,
a comment?
No.
where,
No.
where,
So,
give me an example,
All right,
because
can you
that's
give us,
changing.
can you give an article that we're using a different funding source, then we can move to that?
That
I
I'm
don't-
suggesting a different funding
Yeah.
source? Article 19, fire
Okay,
panel.
let's go to Article 19. So Article 19 is a capital item, right? And basically, in order for the Finance Committee's recommendation to use free cash or alternate funding source, we're changing the funding source in this particular article. So Article 19, are you suggesting that we take this out of capital stabilization?
Exactly.
Okay. So my question is, that the article then would be worded in a way that it would take the money from capital stabilization?
No.
And you're
I
saying
don't
no?
think- Absolutely not, I don't think that would work at all. That's changing the article that the selectmen would be voting. So I would think that only way that,
All right, I think
Yeah.
it's what town council asked.
Okay.
Right, just for,
right.
Clarity.
So you'd be changing the article that the selectmen vote on.
yeah, right, so ask town council
right,
if
what's the
the
question?
recommendation of the finance committee should be printed as a warrant article. If the funding source is different from that recommended from the Board of Selectmen.
But you don't want it in just the line where it says recommended to.
No, we want it in the
You want
body.
the body
Right.
changed.
Right, well, this is where this funding source is, right?
Right.
Just, so for Article 19, we're proposing that it reads,
Yeah, what
see
would
if the
you-
town will vote to appropriate $47,000 from capital stabilization to fund fire panel replacement upgrades or take any other action relative thereto.
Yeah, I don't think that.
So
is anything
it's still
that-
proposed by the facilities director, it's still gonna be, recommendation is still gonna be printed from the capital committee, and the finance committee's voting to recommend based on the wording in the article.
But the selectmen may not be.
That's
And
right,
then it would have been changed.
so all I'm saying is,
Right.
I'm not gonna argue with
No,
you.
no, no, I'm just.
saying,
Yeah, just trying to-
Yeah,
yeah,
Ask
yeah.
the
so
question.
Have
ask
it
the
the right
question
way.
is if we can change the
You want to
funding
change
source,
the articles.
and change the articles to
funding
represent the
source
funding
for-
source.
Yeah.
3 articles.
I think it would have to be an amendment.
Okay,
Mr. Anderson, just like the Article 2 is the Finance Committee's, the warrant is the Selectmen's.
Okay.
So we are able to not recommend, but amend on the floor. So basically say, we do not recommend it.
no, we're not recommending it,
I guess what you're trying to say.
we're asking to amend it.
What I'm
Amend.
trying to
Amend it,
tell
yeah.
you, a process in which you could utilize to get what
Yeah.
you're trying to do is, we do not recommend it as written. So we would have to have it not recommended as written, and then get up and explain on the floor the conditions. We
Okay.
could not recommend it under these because it would not allow us, it would force us into an override. These
Right.
are part of,
Okay.
so that is how that process is. But